All right, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Tech Tips for Your Job Search, which is part of our Get That Job webinar series here at the Champaign Public Library. My name is Jordan Neal, and I am the career librarian, so thank you all for joining us. So for the latest library news and updates, we invite you to visit our website, champaign.org, or you could follow us on social media if that's an option for you. You can email us at librarian@champaign.org, or you could chat with us just by visiting the homepage of our website. Moving on to a couple of Zoom features available to you that might help during this webinar. There are some icons at the bottom of your Zoom screen depending on your device, or sometimes it's at the top. On the far left, you have the options that control your sound or your speaker. Moving to the right and within the center of the window includes a chat and raised hand option. You could use these options to ask us any questions or share any comments. We're going to be providing some opportunities for engagement throughout the webinar. You can enter your question into the chat or raise your hand, and we could unmute you so you can speak and ask your question. We will also be pausing for questions as well as presenting some fun questions, so stay tuned. I'd also like to remind everyone that our webinars are recorded and posted to the library's YouTube channel. So once again, this is Tech Tips for Your Job Search. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Jordan Neal, and I am the career librarian here at the library. And joining me today is the library's technology librarian, Susan Winkler, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Yes, so I am the technology librarian here at the Champaign Public Library. Been in the position for about 3 years now, I think. But before that, I was here as an associate, worked and then as a librarian. So I've been with the library now for I think 8 or 9 years ish.
Wow, it's been that long. Okay,
something like that now. And we're really excited to have you here today. We do hope that we can offer this webinar in person sometime as a workshop where we can actually be a little more hands-on and have some activities too. But thank you for joining us today, and hopefully you'll still be able to get something out of it.
All right, well, thank you, Susan. So we would like to start this off with a question for you all. We're hoping this is going to be more of a conversation, not a lecture or a presentation. And like I said, we're hoping to provide those opportunities for engagement, to interact with us, or a chance to play with Zoom. If you're not familiar with Zoom, we're all about learning here at the library. So in this particular webinar, you can enter your answers into the chat, or of course you could raise your hand. But what are you hoping to get out of today's session? We love that you joined us, but why did you join us? Just curious. You can type it into the chat or raise your hand. You could even enter it a one-word answer if that works for you. All right. Well, while you consider those, yeah, people are searching for jobs. Yes. Okay. So why Tech Tips? Why are we hosting this webinar, hopefully workshop here at the library in the future? For one, it's just now the reality, related to the online job search and when you're applying for jobs. In order to apply for a job today, it involves navigating or just having an idea of the general tech landscape, including the online world and many other tech-related elements, especially as more employers and job candidates gain access to the internet or share information through the internet. Here at the library, we're rarely helping, community members with paper applications. We're helping them apply for jobs using the computer. We're helping people set up emails to apply for jobs, because many of these job applications, as we know, require an email address these days, or you have to create an online profile of some type. Many pieces of the job application process involves some use of technology, whether you're connecting to the internet, you're saving a document like a resume or a cover letter. If you're using a device to apply for a job, technology seems to be involved at every step, hence why I invited Susan to join us today. So we're just hoping to encourage you all to perhaps, consider becoming acclimated with technology in general, and we'll discuss how technology, as Susan shares often, can hopefully help you and not hinder you, and just improve your overall experience when it comes to applying for those jobs. And as we mentioned earlier, we're hoping to have the conversation. So again, please feel free to type into the chat.
Yeah, and speaking of participation and typing into the chat, we also are wondering what you think you need to be aware of to apply for a job in today's world. And what sort of tech issues have you come across or have you experienced, or any barriers that you've experienced to applying for a job right now? I know, especially with the pandemic, it has created a lot of issues around technology and being able to apply for jobs, and possibly having an online interview versus one where you might be more comfortable having an in-person interview. And of course, there's no right or wrong answer, but this helps us kind of tailor the discussion, or what we'll talk about, and what we want to focus on to what you're actually experiencing.
Yeah, I know here at the library, a lot of it's not just the job application, right? It's an email address, it's your online profile, it's the follow-up, it's online sites, it's all of the above. So it's just like we just mentioned, technology is involved at almost every step of the process, and not just for the job search, but for the professional world. Overall, there's been a shift from the in-person, paper-based applications. I'm not saying that they're completely gone, but again, the majority of people we're helping here at the library are navigating the online environment. They're using our computers. Like I said, we're rarely encountering those people who are using the paper applications. I know sometimes employers used to have employment kiosks and things like that, but a lot of the time they're coming here for help. Sometimes, people go to local employment centers. I know that's an option, and people have discussed that with me, but again, that involves the use of a computer. Sometimes if you're trying to navigate those employment websites like LinkedIn or Indeed, Monster, things like that. They're not library resources, but again, we're helping people here at the library use those resources. That involves technology. So I think we're proving our point here that it's needed, especially with the current situation, and people needed to social distance. Here at the library, we totally use Zoom, to present these webinars. We're using it right now. And just to add to our point, using resumes, cover letters, a lot of people, you can choose to write them out by hand, but again, a lot of the time you're using Pages, you're using Word documents, you're using Adobe to create, you might be using Canva to be creating this. Again, that involves technology.
Yeah, and I think one of the major things that we're seeing, especially right now, is making sure that you have access to the technology and the tools that you would need to have a successful experience, either applying for jobs online, or if you make it to the interview round, being able to interview through something like Zoom, or GoToMeeting, or Skype, or whatever. So there are some things you have to consider, and internet connection is a big one. If you don't have an internet connection at home, where can you go to have a reliable internet connection? How do you make sure it's secure? How do you make sure that your computer is working well enough that you can get to the interview and have a successful interview? Being able to navigate websites is a big thing. If you can't upload a if you don't know how to upload a document to a website, or make an attachment that you can put up somewhere, that's going to be a big barrier. And that's why we're here to help. And I love that, Jordan, I have a saying for the technology workshops that we teach here at the library, where it's the three P's, which is practice, patience, and perseverance. And last time we taught the workshop, Jordan added the fourth P, which is the public library. So when you're looking for places that can help you, that have study rooms like we have here at the library, that we have in-house laptops that you can borrow that have webcams. So if you need to do a job interview, you can come into the library, you can check out a study room. It's nice. It's got a door that can close. We've got fairly reliable internet here. So we want to help you succeed. So technology should as Jordan mentioned, help, not hinder. So we are also here to help make sure that technology doesn't become a barrier for you. We also want to make sure that once you've learned a skill, a tech skill, I mean, it really does apply to a lifelong learning environment where technology is changing fast enough that, every 2 or 3 years, something, a device will be obsolete and you'll need to learn something new. So we want it to be a situation where you develop a passion for lifelong learning and continuing to advance in your career, and also advancing with that technology that you'll need to survive and succeed.
Thank you, Susan. Mm-hmm. Any questions at this point? And you can feel free to type them into the chat. We'll be looking out for them, or you could raise your hand either way. I don't see any questions at the moment, so we'll move forward. So another question for you all, how do you stay organized? Whether it's technology or not, how do you stay organized? You can answer that in the chat. I know we always joke around. We have a shared family calendar on our devices, and essentially if it's not in the calendar, it's not happening to my family. So that's something that we utilize. How about you, Susan?
We use our fridge a lot. Sort of the low tech version in my house is anytime I have to pay a bill, I tack it right up to the fridge, and then so I know when it's due and pull it down and to pay it. And but I also of course have a Google Calendar linked in my phone and shared with my spouse so that we know what's going on in each other's lives in case we forget to tell each other. Like you said, if you don't know what they're doing, it doesn't necessarily happen unless you know, or if you're wondering, why aren't they home yet? Taking a quick look at their calendar to know, oh, they actually have something going on tonight is super helpful. And I think that is also, of course, true while you're working on finding a job. And being organized is a great way to keep track of all of the things that you have to keep in mind.
So here at the library, we're not only helping people apply for jobs, but everything that comes with applying for the job. So including keeping track of all the jobs you've applied for, the different versions of your resume, your job history. I talk about having a career journal in Resume Basics, where I encourage people to write down their entire professional work history, just so you can have that reference. But it doesn't just involve technology, but that's also staying organized. So like we said, we've helped so many people here apply for a job at the library, and sometimes they're like, did I apply for that job? And I encourage them to use different, software or whatever tools that they can access. So Susan's going to discuss how technology can help you stay organized.
Yeah. So, and I'm actually going to share a quick example here. So Jordan, I'm going to go ahead and take your screen from you.
Yeah, you can have it.
And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that I use to keep track of things. So I'm hoping you can see the Google Drive screen.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So Google Drive is essentially a cloud storage service through Google. It's free if you have a Google account. So if you have a Gmail email address, that's already, it's available to you as part of the what they call workspace now. And you can see it's a nice place where they actually do have templates, just like Microsoft Word has templates for resumes and cover letters. And of course, you're going to want to keep track of those things because every time you write a cover letter, it should be tailored to that position. You don't want to have a cover letter that says, dear so-and-so at one company, and you're actually submitting it to a different company. You want to make sure you can avoid that. And one of the ways you can do that is with a job tracker. So for example, we have a job tracker here. Let me go ahead and click on it so it pops up, where you can see, and this is through Google Sheets, and this is one you can actually, you can download. And it's essentially a job tracker where you can keep track of the application materials, whether or not you need a cover letter, if you need, proof of your high school diploma or any of those kind of things. You can also, you can put the date that it was submitted. You can put whether it's done or not done. You can put the date that something's due, and you can also put that it's coded so that it can be in red when it's close. So you know that you need to start something. And it's a nice way to just kind of keep track, because as you start to apply for jobs, if you're applying for multiple jobs, you want to make sure you can keep track of which ones, as Jordan said, that you've already submitted, what stuff you've done, what stuff you haven't done yet. So, and there's a second one I want to show too. So this is another example of a job search tracker. So you can put down the employer, and then not only does it work for submitting all of your application materials, but afterwards, if you want to track how long should you wait before, you want to call and confirm that they got all the materials. And if you want to send a thank you note and things like that. And this, you can keep track of all that in something like, here you go, like the thank you is sent and whether or not you've followed up. So it's good to keep track of all of those things. So that's one example of how you can do things. The other thing I wanted to show was the templates real quick. So, and this is just with Google, but of course, like I said, Microsoft Word offers the same kind of things where you can do templates. So this was one that we created using a template in Google Docs. And you can see, you can fill it out. Jordan also has some other resources where that are available through the library where they will help you create a resume and create a cover letter and give you feedback. And we'll talk about those a little bit later. But I just want you to know there's lots of stuff out there that's to help you create those things and keep track of them. Okay.
Thank you, Susan. Is it okay if I share?
Yes. Yep. I gotta move my captions out of the way.
All right. And again, whatever, like Susan said, it's whatever works for you. I think I got it here. So if you're using Microsoft, you're using Google, as Susan mentioned, whatever cloud storage, what is it, Dropbox or something like that, anything that helps you stay organized, not just applying for jobs. Sometimes you get those calls for the phone interviews and you're trying to remember who you applied for, so you can easily pull up your spreadsheet and use that as a reference.
And I'll say the other thing that's nice about using something through the cloud is also that no matter where you are, as long as there is a computer with internet, you can access those documents that you've already created. It's one of the big advantages of using a cloud service. So you could work at it at home and then come here to the library, log in on one of our public computers and get right back into your stuff and continue working on them.
All right. Any questions about how to organize your items? And again, just type them into the chat. So I wanted to discuss just some technology pieces when it comes to actually searching and applying for jobs. Some of this we discussed in our job search job search 101 webinar. But the first thing was just account profiles in general. For many employers, you most likely have to create an online profile or a username, or sometimes it's just the username is actually your email address. So we just want to remind you to keep it accessible and professional. I always like to share stories of people who, I don't like sharing these stories, it's just a reality, but people who lose access to email accounts, and that how it just has like a ripple effect when it comes to your opportunities. We've helped people here at the library who got the job and then they sent them their onboarding package and they didn't have access to their email address. So they had to go back to that employer and restart the whole process with their email address. It's just not the best look on your first day, right? Let's see here. So when you're creating those usernames and email addresses, please just default to professionalism. Perhaps reconsider another email address or anything that you just don't want a potential employer to see. So I wouldn't do I like to party all day and not work at gmail.com. Just a lot of the times people use usernames, things like that. Another thing to consider is just something as simple as file types when submitting any documents to a job application, like your resume or your cover letter. With any job application, of course, you want to default to whatever they're asking you to include, and that also includes file type. So you don't want to be submitting as a pages document when maybe that employer is in a kind of a PC world and they don't know, they can't necessarily open up the file. And there's a lot of conflicting information out there, but generally what's worked for us here at the library as staff and with our customers, saving as a PDF file or a doc or a docx file. But again, you should just default to what the job application requires. And I also wanted to briefly mention applicant tracking systems. So essentially, before your resume gets into the hands of a hiring manager or team, it might go through an applicant tracking system or resume scanning software. So these systems are essentially designed to save recruiters time and to find optimal or viable candidates. So if you're adding imaging, certain fonts, special formatting, even columns, sometimes that might compromise it might prevent your resume from going through. And I should mention that all these systems are different. There's not one set of systems that an employer uses. And like we said, you should always just have your resume or a template to tailor to any position. Here at the library, we have people who are so excited to apply for that job, and they don't have a resume or a template. They don't have the job history or anything like that. So going back to that staying organized discussion, just have that ready. We also encourage you, again, just be mindful of what the job is asking you for. Really consider those supplemental questions, what they're asking you. Also fill out the entire job application. I know it might be repetitive. I know it might be on your resume, but we want the job, right? So I'm going to do whatever that job application is asking me for. Sometimes some of them, some sites will pull from your resume, which is helpful, but sometimes it's not accurate. So I'd also not just input the information, I would review it. They usually give you an option to review before you submit that application. Let's see here. Am I missing anything else? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I know that can seem like a tedious process to have to repeat by filling in those the forms, essentially, where they're creating your online resume, but it is very important. Especially in the age of online applications, where making sure that everything that you type in there or the pull down menus, sometimes it doesn't exactly fit for what your career or your title was or things like that. But it's very important to still go ahead and fill those things out.
Yes. And I also say mindful application, because as I mentioned earlier, there's employment sites like Indeed and Monster. They're helpful. You upload a resume, but you can't tailor that resume to a job posting. So again, do what works for you, but sometimes tailoring that resume really helps. Just having your template ready, but changing it over. I know people use those employment sites, but I do like to mention again, you can't tailor to the language that the employer is using. You can't include any keywords. We discussed this in our resume basics class. But yeah, whatever works, especially if you need help with the technology piece, we could really help you here at the library. So just come visit us.
Yeah, so that was a very nice segue, Jordan, to talking about your technology considerations. So you have to consider, especially, and this isn't necessarily just when you get to the interview portion, but again, also if you're applying for a job where you may be working remote or you may be working virtually, you do have to prove that you have the capability to do that and that you have the technology and equipment at home or wherever you're going to be working from to make it successful. So one of the big things you'll want to consider is the environment. And I think everyone during the pandemic probably had to at least consider this one time when your pet or another person in your household perhaps walked in on a meeting that you were having and got to be the star of your meeting for a few minutes. Think about whether or not you can close a door. For me, when we first started webinars here at the library, people were mowing their lawn at exactly the same time we were having webinars right outside the window. So that's why I got headphones to kind of dampen out some of that noise. Also, feel free. I mean, you can get a free, like I said, Google, you can get a free Gmail account. You can get a free Yahoo email address. And you can start playing with some of the technology that you might be required to use in your job. So if a job says, you need to be proficient with Microsoft Word, if you're not proficient with Microsoft Word yet, come see us. We've got tools in place that can help you. We've got classes where we teach classes on Microsoft Word. We also have some resources that we're going to mention at the end where you can, do some learning on your own. Consider, and again, the internet considerations. We have hotspots here at the library that you can check out. We have pretty reliable internet in the house. But again, you might want to consider how reliable is your home internet if you have home internet. Is it better for you to be connected with a wired connection with an Ethernet cable to your router versus, having that Wi-Fi in the house? If I step out onto my porch, my internet connection is not nearly as good as if I'm right in the living room of my house. We also want to make sure you're not assuming the tech competency of the person who's interviewing you too. They may not have the same level of technology skills that you already have. So if you can go in there and help troubleshoot or help show that you're willing to try to solve a problem, say you're starting an interview and there's no audio, you're like, well, what are the things that you can do to try and troubleshoot and fix that when you get into an interview? The person on the other end may not know how to fix it either. So it's good to work together, and that's a great way to prove that you have problem solving skills. You might consider what kind of equipment you're going to have an interview on, or what kind of equipment, if you have your cell phone and you're having to hold your cell phone up here, your face the whole time you have an interview with someone, eventually, one, your arm's going to get really tired. And two, it's a much smaller screen. But if that's all you've got, that's all you've got. That's what you can do. But again, if you can seek out, borrow a device from a friend that's an actual computer, or, come and use one here at the library, getting yourself a pair of headphones and a mic so that you can talk and gesture like I do a lot instead of having to hold something here is a good idea. You got to consider your audio and your visuals, what's in your background. For me, I've got this nice row of chairs here, but there's not a whole lot of distracting things. You want to consider what you're going to look, what the presentate, what image are you putting forward, because you are on camera in a way. And we also put here accurate and agreed upon timing. This was a little bit more important, I think, at the beginning, and now we're in daylight savings time, so it's probably important again. When you make sure that if you're scheduling something with someone that's on the West Coast or the East Coast, remember time zone differences so that you show up on time in your virtual interview or virtual world. And there can be hurdles to these things. There's a number of things that can happen when you start working with the devices and the technology. It's good to practice ahead of time. If your computer suddenly decides that it needs to install updates, go ahead and go in and say, wait, install those later, not now. I'm about to have an interview in 10 minutes.
Oh, the Zoom updates. They
something
show
like
right
that,
time, don't they?
Yes, exactly. So knowing which ones you can put off and which ones you need to go ahead and do. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Susan. So there are certainly professional considerations too when it comes to your job search and technology. So for example, if you're emailing with a potential employer, just be mindful of what you're saying and how you're saying it. Everyone could easily go back to their email correspondences these days and read those previous exchanges. Unfortunately, we don't always get the job, and we always don't learn through a phone call. So sometimes it's through email. So just be mindful on how you respond. And not just email, but if you're messaging back and forth on LinkedIn or any social media or Facebook or something like that. I know I've certainly corresponded with professional contacts through LinkedIn's messaging system. What are the names of your online profiles and emails? We discussed that before. Just consider kind of your tech footprint when it comes to your overall professional world, which Susan will talk about in a little bit here. I did want to discuss video conferencing because it's something that was very real during the pandemic. And there is a high possibility of people continuing to do video conferencing when it comes to job interviews or networking. So like Susan said, it could be through Zoom or Skype or something like that. Susan discussed some of the technology pieces, but there are some professional pieces to just parallel some of her points. Again, here at the library, we've helped a lot of people with practice interviews online. So these are just a few things to keep in mind when you're granted, hopefully granted that real virtual interview, or even if you're presenting professionally online. So like Susan said, find that private place if possible. we do have study rooms here at the library, but just find somewhere, whether it's at home, that can be away from that ambient noise. Get headphones if needed. If not, make sure if you are at home, what's your family doing? That before we would start Zoom webinars or a meeting, I would check in where my family is. I would always let them know. I'm turning off notifications on my email. I'm turning off notification on anything in the background that might distract me or my audience. Turn off your phone. If you're not speaking during a virtual interview or a presentation, consider turning off your mic if that's an option for you. Be mindful of your breathing, your coughing, or even if you're sighing into a mic, and just default to that professional behavior. It applies in the online world too. When you sign into Zoom, again, what name is displaying on the screen? If you are in a job interview, you most likely will have your video on. But again, what's showing up on the screen? During the pandemic, while we were at home, we still dressed. I think me and Susan did. Sometimes we would dress just like we were going to work, just to get us into that mindset.
Absolutely.
I don't know if everyone did that, but at least top up, right?
Yes.
Yes. So again, same thing if you're doing that presentation or the interview, make sure, what are you wearing? Perhaps avoid the dangling earrings or the bracelets that might make noise during your interview. Be mindful of your lighting situation. We're using lights here at the library, but if you don't have any lights at home, maybe you can use a window or use natural lighting. If it's a sunny day, maybe not so much because the sun might be in your eyes. But yeah, there's lots of, at home, that's what I was doing. I didn't have a ring light like this, but I was using natural lighting through my window. I
absolutely staged where I was.
Yeah.
From home. And even here.
Yeah.
This is a staged, spot here.
And again, just be mindful, whether it's in person or online or using technology, just be mindful of the tone of voice. And depending on everyone's internet connection, just speak slowly. I know I have to remind myself that sometimes it might just lag, just for clarity. One of our colleagues sent us an article that mentioned comfort cues, which is essentially the little things you do when you're nervous, which might increase during an on-camera experience or interview. So don't sit too still like you're frozen. You could, Susan, is that your comfort cue?
That's my comfort cue. Yes.
Mine is
not that exaggerated, but still I do tend to, I channel my nervous energy. If I'm in a chair that moves. Yep.
Yeah. Mine's toe tapping. Luckily that's off camera, but in person, I have to be mindful of that. Just moving my leg. As far as eye contact using technology or during video conferencing, I try my best to look at the camera, but you all are like a green dot right now. So this is me making eye contact. Sometimes I'm trying to look at a presentation, but just be mindful of that. Another thing to mention, when you're signing off of that interview or you're signing off of that Zoom call, just make sure, the camera's off. You've signed off the call before you do that sigh of relief or you say anything interesting off camera. Let's see. Oh, and notes. If you're going to have any notes, that's another thing. You can have brief notes, even in in-person interview, but don't use them as your guide. You still want to be making eye contact with your audience. And that's anything else to add, Susan?
Yeah, no, I think that's everything that I consider when I right before I prep for a webinar or anything. I'm mindful of those things. Yeah.
All right, I don't see any questions, so we're going to move forward. So as far as the online environment, again, which involves some technology, we encourage you to perform routine audits of yourself, of your online life, which might include simply, like Susan says, Googling yourself or checking your presence on social media or your settings from the outside world. So I'll go ahead and let Susan discuss this.
Yeah, so when you think of an online audit, you want to think of all the profiles that you have, all of the social media, especially that's out there, and maybe look at the stuff that you've shared, what stuff is private, what stuff is public. You can also have other friends come in and, run this audit for yourself on, okay, what can you actually see as my friend? And then what could someone from the public see who's not actually a friend of mine? And go through some of those posts and test these things and make sure, and honestly, if it's on the internet, it's out there. Someone can find it, someone can screenshot it. So it's a good idea to keep it as part of your image. It's what you're putting out there. And yes, Googling yourself, I still Google myself. And I also, because I have a fairly, not a super common name, but common enough that there are other Susan Winklers who are more well-known than I am on the internet. I do Google myself occasionally just to see what's out there. You don't want to be confused for someone else that has your same name. And or if there is someone out there with your same name, you want to make sure you're aware of that. For example, with me, there's another Susan Winkler who is in pharmacy, and they come up first in most of the searching on the when I Google myself and just Google Susan Winkler. So they come up a lot more often than I do. But if there was something that came up about me, I'd want to make sure that, I knew what it was and that I'm aware that it's out there. It shows that you're internet and tech savvy enough to know what's out there about you. And I was going to say too, also not just Googling yourself, but you can also create Google alerts. And I think you can do this with other companies too, but with Google, a Google alert is essentially Google will basically crawl the web for whatever topic you pick. You can also do this for companies that you're interested in working for. So before you go in for an interview or something, or if you're researching a company you might want to work for, you can put in the name of that company. And then, once a day or once a week, you can get a summary of what's out there about that company, which is a nice way to keep track and kind of get to know an organization or company that you might want to work for. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to share my screen real quick to show you this and how you can create it. So we're going to head back here. And you don't have to have a Google account to do this. You can set it up to go to any email address you want, but it's just google.com/alerts, or you can go to alerts.google.com, and that'll bring you to the same place. And then you can just set it up. So for example, I can put in the Champaign Public Library, and then I would enter my email address down here, and then I would create the alert. And then you get to pick if you want it to be, so if I do, this is our demo account here. If I say create the alert, oh, well, I guess I can't create it now. The servers, there's some issues going on. But if I did, let's see if I can do it again. So you can already see with the alert preview where those words are going to show up and what's going to happen. And you get some examples. So I do recommend a Google alert for either a company or your industry, or whatever professional career track you're taking. It's good to know what's going on out there. It's a good way to, I have Google alerts for technology around here. I have Google alerts for other areas of my interest in virtual reality, all that kind of stuff, because it does help me in my job. It does help me with my career and my focus on things. So I do recommend that. I'll show you real quick the Google search just for Susan Winkler without putting my middle initial in there or anything. And we'll find that, of course, LinkedIn is going to come up at the very top. So if you have a LinkedIn profile, this is another one you should check for your online audit to make sure what's public about your LinkedIn profile and how does it look. And Jordan actually has a class on LinkedIn basics. So if you're interested in LinkedIn and cleaning up your LinkedIn or taking a closer look at it and doing this audit, I highly recommend taking the workshop that she has for LinkedIn basics. So, but you can see, yeah, there's the Susan Winkler who has pharmacy background. There's also Susan Winkler who's written some books. It's not me. But it's good to know that everything that's out there, me, where do I first appear? I'm not, I'm not even in the first 10 results. So it's good. So something to consider. Other things you might want to think about, cyberspace is, it's not locked down necessarily. So lock down what you can, control what you can, look at your privacy settings, and see what you can do. Okay, I'm gonna stop share. Oops, all right, let you go back. Okay. And again, the main idea here is to make it so that you're comfortable with what's out there. You may want to go back and look at, whatever you were doing in 1999 or 2000. Maybe you don't want that to be available to anyone else to see anymore. Maybe there's, maybe your brand identity has changed since then, and you want to present a different view of yourself to the world, to the public.
So. 100%. Yeah. Jordan on Facebook in 2004 is different than Jordan on Facebook in 2021.
Yes, same.
Thank you, Susan. All right, so as you apply for those jobs and submit those applications, we did want to mention some areas where you should be mindful, hence our careful and cautious line here. So the first thing I wanted to mention is that we're librarians and we're not lawyers. So we're not experts on that, but there are some items to be, again, aware of during your job application process. When, again, online technology, there are certain items or red flags you just want to be looking for when you are applying for those jobs. One item is just is what a prospective employer can or can't ask you or require during that process. You know, there are federal and state level laws that prohibit asking them these questions, including discriminatory questions such as at the any stage, whether you're applying or at the hiring stage. So questions related to basically race, age, gender, religion, spirituality, anything like that, that would be an item of concern when you're applying for those jobs. Again, we mention this because this is what we're helping people here at the library with every day. I would question if it was a legitimate opportunity and just avoid that situation entirely, and even perhaps consider reporting it. Now, it is different from information being required or volunteered. So sometimes we help people apply for those jobs and they ask these questions, but on a volunteer basis. So it might say, do you want to answer these questions? You can say yes or no, or they present the options. And then the final option is prefer not to say, or something like that. But again, it cannot be required to answer those questions. Something else to be on the lookout is for anything related to, you know, money or reimbursement. If they're asking you to pay a bunch of money, that would be a potential red flag. I know some employers do cover expenses when it comes to relocation costs, or sometimes they give you sign-on bonuses. You know, as I mentioned a lot, I'm also a registered nurse, and there are sign-on bonuses for registered nurses. But if it's a $1 million sign-on bonus, you know, a house by the beach, you know, things like that might be a red flag, and it could be too good to be true, right? So you got to do that research. So I would continue to perform your research. You can come into the library. We definitely have library resources that can help you look up these businesses, and just essentially, you know, go with your gut. And not just find the information, but determine if it's a legitimate job opportunity for you, because it's ultimately going to be you that's working that job, and you need to determine if it's going to be a good fit for you. And oops, I didn't bring my chat back up. I don't see any questions right now, so we'll move forward.
I think that's especially true right now, Jordan, with a lot of work from home opportunities.
Oh, yes.
Especially with, you know, a lot of people being remote now, there's a lot more of those potential work from home opportunities, and you want to be pretty careful about researching the company ahead of time.
All right, so of course we wanted to talk about some of the resources we offer here at the library that you can access with Champaign Library Card or a virtual library card. So we'll start with Gale courses.
Yeah, so earlier on when I mentioned, you know, perhaps if you're looking at the required qualifications for a certain job, and it says something like you need to know how to use Microsoft products like Word or Excel. Gale courses is something that we have here at the library, where if you have a Champaign card, you can log in and you can take courses that are taught by instructors, and they're online courses. They include discussion sections and quizzes where you can ask questions and you can test your knowledge, that are 6-week long. So they offer a little bit more structure and all sorts of topics, including Jordan, I believe you took the sign language one, right?
I took Mastering Public Speaking. I've taken a bunch, but that's one I enjoyed a lot.
Yeah, so there's lots of different, there's language learning, there's stuff for grant writing, there's Photoshop, there's a whole bunch of different, both on the tech side and the career skills side, that you can take through Gale courses.
So we offer Job Now, which we frequently use here in career services at the library. So Job Now can provide, resume and cover letter templates. It has a live chat feature for your job or career-related questions, especially about when you're creating your resume or if you're about to have that job interview. It has career assessments, but one of the biggest takeaways for Job Now is that you can upload your resume or your cover letter to their resume lab, and then you could receive expert feedback 1 to 2 business days after you upload your document. So it's a very helpful service. A lot of customers use it. I've used it, so consider checking out Job Now.
Yeah, and LinkedIn Learning is another online platform that we have where they have a series of videos, and then some of the videos tied together to make courses. And there's a lot of different topics, including, job hunting, interviewing, computer software like Photoshop or Illustrator, maintaining positive relationships with your coworkers, and helping you with customer service. There's, the other week I was learning about creating virtual reality videos through LinkedIn. And these are basically on demand. So you log in, you search for your topic, you pick a video, you can watch it right then and there, or you can pick up one video and then come back to pick up others. So it's a little different than Gale Courses in that Gale Courses is structured and it has a specific time frame in which you have to you complete everything, whereas LinkedIn Learning, it kind of runs at your schedule and your pace. So, but it's also another fantastic resource that we have here at the library. And again, these are all free with a library card.
Mm-hmm. And then I finally wanted to discuss Peterson's Test and Career Prep. It offers a lot. First off, it has really great practice tests for a variety of exams. So GRE, ACT, SAT, I'm going to mention all the acronyms. The US citizenship test. I use this when I did my nursing boards for the state exams, which was so helpful to me. And just like the Job Now resource I mentioned, it also has great career development tools, such as, again, career assessments, interview assistance. They have a virtual career library that offers modules or tutorials that focus on anything from career changes to, again, resume help or the job search. It also has a really great resume builder where you can enter the content in like job application style, and then you could export it to, I think, a PDF. I think you can do Word, but right now for sure it's a PDF. But it helps you focus on your experience instead of that formatting piece, which I know is a huge factor when creating your resume. So any questions? Oh, thank you for putting it in the chat, Susan. Any questions any questions in general, or anything about our online resources? I don't see anything at the moment. All right. Well, that's all we have for now. Here's our contact information if you want to reach out to us directly. Once again, we're doing appointments here at the library. We can do them virtually if you need help with your job applications, resumes, cover letters. Susan is our technology librarian, so if you want some help getting started, with your technology, you can check in with her. So we have our contact information there.
Yeah. And we have the book of librarian appointments, which I think you're getting to that slide. And when you do, I'll put that in the chat as well.
And thank you all for joining us today. So our next career webinar will be LinkedIn Basics, which will be next Tuesday, November 16th at 10 a.m. And it'll be me. I'll be talking about, again, the basics of using LinkedIn Learning. And we hope you'll consider attending more webinars and workshops. We have a lot more coming up, I have our career series here for November, but we have a lot more related to our business series, our technology series, of course, which Susan will talk about in just a moment. Crafty Adults, Writers Workshops. We have a new legal series coming up, so just visit champaign.org/events for more information. You could also receive updates from us, latest library news, by signing up for our newsletter, and you can just visit champaign.org/news to sign up for that. And Susan, I'll let you talk about the upcoming tech workshops.
Yeah, so today, we actually have our ebooks, audiobooks, and magazines workshop. That's for our e-library resources. So if you are here and you have a Champaign card or an Urbana card or surrounding libraries, we generally have e-materials now So if you want to come and learn how to access stuff that you could put onto either a smartphone or a tablet, and then next week it'll be movies and music and more. And then at the end of November and the beginning of December, we have our two-part Getting Started with the Internet series, where we talk about privacy and security on the internet and how to do more how to do searching with some tips and tricks for better search strategies as well.
All right. And as we mentioned earlier, most of our webinars are recorded and added to the library's YouTube channel. So you could just visit this link here, champaign.org/YouTube, or you can go to YouTube and search Champaign Public Library, whatever works for you. But just a reminder, we have some really great content there. So we hope you consider taking a look. And again, if you have any final questions, please send us a chat. And if you missed our contact information, you could email librarian@champaign.org or info@librarian@champaign.org, and it will get to us. And as Susan mentioned, oh, you already put it in there. We are offering those Book a Librarian appointments. They're just appointments where you can sit down with us for any help. We don't have to jump into all the details right away. We could just start off with a conversation. And that's all we have. Anything to add, Susan?
No, I think you did a great job there. Yeah, we're happy to help. So come see us or reach out.
Quiet group today. People still sipping on their coffee. All right. Well, I don't see any further questions. So yeah, I think we'll go ahead and end the webinar. What do you think, Susan?
Yeah. And again, if you do have questions afterwards, Jordan, you send out a email with the link to we'll send out the link to the video, and you can always reach out.
All right. Well, I hope. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. I'm getting some things in the chat. All right. Yes. Well, I hope everyone enjoys their morning. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.